Guess you got to go to a bookstore for the first time in over 6 months. Me! Hi everyone, my name is Maddie and welcome back to my channel, or thanks for joining us if you're new here. Today I'm going to show you all of the books that I got, because honestly, I'm not a huge fan of these crazy book haul videos. Sometimes I see people getting these books and I'm like, dear God, you must have just spent an arm and a leg on books. But I guess I can't critique them anymore because it has been way too long since I've been able to go to a bookstore, because in Ontario things have been in lockdown on and off like crazy, and we finally got out of lockdown and I was able to go to Chapters for the first time in forever, and I bought 11 books. Sorry not sorry about it. I'm actually a little bit disappointed because I had looked up all the books ahead of time, checked that they were in that store, and noted where they were. So I found everything really quickly, and I kind of missed that experience of just getting to wander around. But there were so many books that I've been waiting to get for eons that I went a little feral. I was a little too over-prepared, but So I figured I would show you all everything that I got, and this is probably gonna couple as being a summer TBR list, because these books will probably be trying to get me through the next couple months. We'll find out how fast I can read this time around. Alright, what's on the top of my stack? Yes, this is how tall my stack is, that my hand has to go here. Book number 1 is On Earth, We're Briefly Gorgeous, and this is by Ocean Vuong. I realized the other day that I actually have a quote from Ocean Vuong on my wall, and I don't think it's from this book. I think it's from an article that they did in the New York Times, but it's just interesting to me that I never realized that, and now I have a book by them. So that's what happens when you exist on the internet. But I have seen a lot of quotes from this book in particular, and a lot of praise about it. I do have to say, I think the cover for this book, the next one that I'm going to show you, which is Crush, and then A Little Life, they all kind of look like they would belong in a series together with these kind of black and white photographs. So do with that what you will. But to actually tell you what this book is about. On Earth is Briefly Gorgeous is a letter from a son to a mother who cannot read, written when the speaker, Little Dog, is in his late 20s. The letter unearths a family history that began before he was born, a history whose epicenter is rooted in Vietnam, at once a witness to the fraught yet undeniable love between a single mother and her son. It was also a brutally honest exploration of race, class, masculinity, and our current American moment, immersed as we are in addiction, violence, and trauma, but undergirded by compassion and tenderness. The question of how to survive and how to make it a kind of joy powers the most important debut novel of many years. I just love me a good book about the human experience and what it means to be human, and this book seems to be something that's going to explore that in depth, so I'm really excited to get the chance to read it. So that is numero uno on my list. The next book that I got is Crush by Richard Seiken. It's a little baby book because it is poetry. Richard Seiken is another one that I have been introduced to through the internet, and I've just seen so many of his poems. I don't think I have any of them on my walls. I might. Who knows? Some days I look at my walls and I go, oh, didn't know that was there. Yes, this is a collection of poetry by Richard Seiken, and he was the winner of the 2004 Yale Series of Younger Poets competition. It says that the poems are driven by panic and obsession. So I think that's really interesting to talk about. It seems to be a lot about love and what it means to be obsessed with someone, and then how that kind of seems to fade out over time. And it also is a queer collection of poetry as well, so of course we love some queer poetry for ourselves. So I'm very excited to get to read more about him, because everything that I've seen online is just some top-tier poetry, and we know I love me a good collection of poetry. Although I do need to find a way to read poetry that works better for me, and I've been talking for months, I've probably mentioned it in a past video, about kind of putting a book of poems by my bed and then maybe doing one every night, and I still haven't done that. So stay tuned to find out if I actually incorporated that into my life for once. The next book that I have is a horror novel, and it is a Cosmology of Monsters by Sean Hamill. This is one of the few books that was not on my list of books to get that I just got spur of the moment, because I was like, I feel like I can't just go into chapters and get everything off my list. That's boring. It's like when you go grocery shopping, you don't buy any treats or anything exciting. Like, it's not, it just feels too adult. I had to go a little off track. So this book follows a family who can see monsters, and all of the family members kind of deal with that in different ways. And then there is Noah, and unlike his family, Noah lets the monsters in. I love me a good book about monstrosity. I'm really interested to see what Noah's relationship to the monsters is, if he sees them as monsters or if he actually sees them maybe as friends, maybe as something more. I just think that the concept of monsters is so fascinating because they've been like created essentially as a language of things that we are fearful of, and they represent so much of ourselves that they end up almost being a mirror and a reflection of our own desires and our own fears. So I'm always love me a good horror novel, especially anything that has to do with monsters. So I am super excited to get to read this one. If you couldn't tell yet, I got quite a plethora of books. There's some nonfiction ones coming up. We got poetry, we got sci-fi, we got just regular fiction. We're gonna be all over the place, but that's good. It's good to have options. So the next book I have is This Is How You Lose the Time War, and this was actually on my list for the Asian Readathon in May, but I could not find a copy of it at any of like the 5 libraries that I have cards to. So now that I've picked it up in person, I can actually read it. So it is by Amal El-Malter and Max Gladstone, and it is told in letters back and forth between 2 characters. So the one author writes the letters for the one character, who is Red, I believe, and the other one is Blue. Red belongs to the agency, a post-singularity technotopia, and Blue belongs to the garden, a single vast consciousness embedded in all organic matter. So they're essentially on like opposite sides of the past, and their future doesn't really seem to be sorted out. But as they write these letters to each other, of course they're going to learn a little bit more about other side of the world and maybe find some way to bring them all together. So this was recommended by one of my favorite webcomic authors, so that is Hari, and they write Finding Home. So I'm super excited to check this book out, and I've heard such lovely things about it. Just looking at some of the quotes on here are good quotes from some good authors, so super excited for that one. I also got Circe, so this is because I recently read the Song of Achilles. I'll link that reading vlog up there if anyone wants to check it out. And this seems to be Madeline Miller's newest book that I've been seeing pretty much everywhere. It also has a mythology take to it, so I will just dive in and give you the little synopsis. So in the house of Helios, god of the sun and mightiest of the Titans, a daughter is born. But Circe is a strange child, not powerful like her father, not viciously alluring like her mother. Turning to the worlds of mortals for companionship, she discovers that she does possess power. The power of witchcraft, which can transform rivals into monsters and menace the gods themselves. Threatened, Zeus banishes Circe to a desert island where she hones her occult craft and crosses paths with many of the most famous in all of mythology, including the Minotaur, Daedalus and his doomed son Icarus, the murderous Medea, and of course, wily Odysseus. But there is danger too, for a woman who stands alone, and Circe unwittingly draws the wrath of both men and gods, ultimately finding herself pitted against one of the most terrifying and vengeful of the Olympians. To protect what she holds dear, Circe must summon her strength and choose once and for all whether she belongs with the gods she is born from or the mortals she has come to love. We all know that I love me a good mythology book. I love me a book that dives into gods and lore and pulls that all apart. So I'm really excited to read another one, and Madeline Miller is a beautiful writer. I absolutely devoured the Song of Achilles. One of my friends actually picked up the Song of Achilles at Chapters, so I'm really excited for him to read it and to see what he thinks. But in the meantime, I will be reading this one. Alright, we got another book of poetry, which is I'll Fly Away. This is the, I was gonna say sequel, but poetry doesn't work that way. The second chapbook by Rudy Francisco, who is probably one of my favorite button authors and an incredible slam poet. It's a little bit thicker than his last one, which I was, I guess, a little bit surprised at, because poetry collections are usually so small, but it seems like, you know, you get a lot of white space with poetry collections, so size doesn't matter. Oh my god, that's about the acest thing that I've ever said. I just used the phrase size doesn't matter referring to books. Welcome to my channel, everyone who hasn't been here before. I feel like this is a perfect summary of who I am as a person. But anyways, to get back to this collection of poetry, the description on the back says, "Language so often fails us. Francisco has created his own words for the things we cannot give name to." And the quote is, "English is the shiniest hammer I own, but it is also the only thing in my toolbox." I love Rudy Francisco's writing. He just has this way to articulate things that I'm like, ugh, like if I could write like that, if I could think of those metaphors, I would be over the moon. So I'm so happy to get to read more of his work in this collection, and I really hope that one day in the future I can see him perform live. That would be absolutely incredible. Okay, I think we're past the halfway point now. So the next book that I have is The Project, and this is by Courtney Summers. This was a book that I did want to read, but it wasn't on my list to pick up, but I still picked it up anyways. It says it's an exclusive edition, and that has a little maple leaf that said it includes bonus content, so maybe this is an exclusive Canadian edition. I actually don't know if the author... Oh, she is Canadian. Who knew? Good for me, reading some Canadian books. But this author wrote the book Sadie that I read last summer, and I absolutely loved. I think it was one of my favorite books of last summer, and this one specifically looks at cults and different people who have lost their family to the Unity Project, which is this specific cult, and it's going to kind of be an exploration analysis of the different people's experiences with that cult, and I'm hoping eventually the end of it, but we'll see, we'll find out. I do just want to take a moment to appreciate how amazing this cover is. Absolutely stunning. So excited to read that one. Again, another author with amazing talent, so that'll be the second book that I'll have read by her, so super excited for that. Okay, so to dive into the nonfiction, switch up tracks a little bit. The first nonfiction book that I got is Ace, and it is What Asexuality Reveals About Desire, Society, and the Meaning of Sex, and it is edited by Angela Chen. So it is a collection of a variety of essays, so I'm super excited to get to read about it because I think it's gonna really mean a lot to me. I think as I've been on this journey of understanding my asexuality more, talking about it on this channel, I've realized even more how absent it is from the stories that I read, from the media I engage in. Like literally this will be the second book with anything to do with asexuality that I have. I guess third. Radio Silence has a demisexual character. It's super exciting for me to get to read something that I know is going to relate directly to what I've experienced, and I also think it's really cool the way that this is going to look at the broad way that asexuality and sex in general is portrayed at in society. We all know I'm a nerd, I love myself a little bit of queer theory, so it will certainly be able to help satisfy that a little bit. But yeah, super excited to check this one out. I feel like I've said that for every book. Of course I'm super excited to check them out, that's why I bought them. The next book I have still has a sticker on it, so I will take it off so I don't expose how much money I spent. Also, I don't know who at Indigo designed these stickers, but they peel off so satisfying, and then I love to fold them in half. I don't know, it's a weird tick I have. That's probably something that might be concerning, but yeah, that's a later problem. Back to the book. So this book is called What Happened to You? Conversations on Trauma, Resilience, and Healing, and it is written by a Dr. Bruce D. Perry and Oprah Winfrey. It's very funny because I keep seeing this book as written by Oprah, and I'm like, so the guy with the MD and the PhD doesn't matter. Only Oprah. I feel like that says a lot about celebrity and how they're really pushing this book to get it sold. I'm in the process right now of undergoing a psychological assessment, as well as just unearthing some of the trauma that I've dealt with in my life, particularly something surrounding a past relationship that I've gone through. And I think I've realized that there's so little conversations about trauma in general within our society that, especially as a kid growing up with these difficult experiences, I didn't know how to process it, and I think it's something that I still really struggle to talk about. So I wouldn't normally pick up kind of a book like this that might be a little bit more self-helpy, I guess, but for me, I'm kind of looking for answers in any way that I can find them. So to hear from maybe an expert a little bit and kind of navigate what trauma means and how to move forward from it and get to read while I'm doing it, sounds stellar to me. So this is definitely a book that I want to check out, and maybe I'll do a review afterwards on how I found it, whether it was helpful, because I find sometimes with these like nonfiction books they can be a little bit hit or miss on how well informed they are. But the fact that it's like Oprah and a doctor, I'm like hoping they'll have, you know, the medical experience and then kind of the conversational aspects to be able to really bring the book together. We'll find out. All right, 2 left. So the next one I have is The Maidens, and this is by Alex Michaelandes? That's how we're saying that name. Who wrote The Silent Patient, which is probably one of the best thrillers that I read in a really long time. It like actually surprised me with the plot twist, and I find because I read so much, I'm often not surprised very often by plot twists. I know that sounds super snobby of me, but I'm gonna say it anyways. This is his newest thriller. I've been seeing a lot of praise for it, so I am really excited to check it out. Honestly, don't really know what it's about, so let's find out. Edward Fosca is a murderer. Of this, Mariana is certain, but Fosca is untouchable. A handsome and charismatic Greek tragedy professor at Cambridge University. That explains the cover. Fosca is adored by staff and students alike, particularly by members of a secret society of female students known as the Maidens. Ooh. Mariana Andrews is a brilliant but troubled group therapist who becomes fixated on the Maidens when one member, a friend of Mariana's niece Zoe, is found murdered in Cambridge. Mariana, who was once herself a student at the university, quickly suspects that behind the idyllic beauty of the spires and turrets and beneath the ancient traditions lies something sinister. And she becomes convinced that despite his alibi, Edward Fosca is guilty of the murder. But why would the professor target one of his students, and why does he keep returning to the rites of Persephone, the maiden, and her journey to the other underworld? When another body is found, Mariana's obsession with proving Fosca's guilt spirals out of control, threatening to destroy her credibility as well as her closest relationships, but Mariana is determined to stop this killer, even if it costs her everything, including her own life. So another kind of mystery whodunit like his last novel, but this one also seems to have a, you know, layer of like the troubled narrative to the person who is trying to pull it apart. It sounds absolutely fascinating to me, conversations about people in positions of power and being able to get away with corruption, as well as celebrity and admiration and what goes along with that. Another book that I'm really looking forward to reading. Again, I'm just sounding like a broken record in this video, so I'm gonna move on to the last one before I start rambling more. Okay, so this one, I just think this is funny that it's a staff pick by TJ, and the book is written by TJ Klune. I'm like, did TJ Klune come in and, you know, recommend his own book? Who knows? Maybe I can demonstrate again how nice these stickers come off. That's my very satisfying era. Maybe I'll make it on Spotify or TikTok one day. Who knows? But this book, I think, has been everywhere. I'm pretty sure it was like a Goodreads Choice Award, either winner or finalist. It seems to be all over the internet, and everyone seems to be very much in love with it. I hadn't heard of TJ Klune before, but someone I follow is a big fan of TJ Klune's. They were talking about all of his other books, but I'm super looking forward to checking out this one. I just really love kind of like the fantasy-esque vibes of the cover. One of my friends called it the Wide Window, the like 3rd book in the series of unfortunate events, and I'm like, you know what, that house on the cliff does kind of look like that. And this is not the Wide Window, it is the house on the Cerulean Sea, and the description of it is Linus Baker is a by-the-book caseworker in the department and charge of magical youth. At 40, he lives in a tiny house with a devious cat and his old records for company, but his quiet life is about to change. Linus is summoned by extremely upper management, given a curious and highly classified assignment. Travel to an orphanage on a distant island and determine whether 6 dangerous magical children are so dangerous, in fact, that they're likely to bring about the end of days. When Linus arrives at the strangest of islands, he's greeted by a series of mysterious figures, the greatest mystery of which is Arthur Parnassus, the master of the orphanage. As Linus and Arthur grow closer, Linus discovers the master would do anything to keep the children safe, even if it means the world has to burn. Or worse, his secret comes to light. Ooh, that sounds very good. It says it's an enchanting love story masterfully told about the profound experience of discovering an unlikely family in an unexpected place and realizing that family is yours. Okay, this sounds gorgeous. And we got found family vibes. I've heard that there's a lot of queer characters in this. I've heard that there's some very adorable magical creatures in this book. It's serving me like magical realism. It's giving me queer joy, which we love to see in novels, and just fantasy elements. And yeah, it just seems very peaceful and soothing to me, which I feel like is strange to say before I've even opened the first cover, but this is another one that I'm looking forward to checking out. I was kind of like humming and hawing about it, and then my mom said she saw it come into the library and she was like, I think you would like it. So it was very funny. I like walked into chapters and on the first table there was like 3 books that I wanted to get. But, you know, it all worked out. We love her. We love when that happens. It just means that these books are getting read by lots of people, which is great. We love when people read. I think I'm a little more like overtired or wired today than I thought I was, because I have like a lot of crazy energy in this video. So I'm gonna stop it before I go completely off the deep end. But those are the 11 books that are now spread chaotically around my desk wherever I had room to put them down while filming. I'm, as I've said a billion times, super excited to read all of them, so stay tuned for maybe some reviews or reading vlogs, and of course they'll be included in my monthly wrap-ups. If there's a particular book you want to see a review of, drop me a comment down below, or if there is a format that you prefer, whether it's the reading vlog or maybe doing a couple books wrap-up at a time, feel free to let me know that too. I love hearing from all of you guys, and of course you inform what I do on this channel. So thanks so much for coming on this journey with me, and I do want to say thanks for being so patient with me, because I know there was a good gap of like 2.5 weeks where I didn't post any content. My life has been a little bit chaotic lately, but I'm trying to get back into the groove because this is something that brings me joy, and it also gives me a schedule and something regularly to work towards. Plus, it's also just super fulfilling to get to hear that these videos are resonating with you guys, and maybe some of my recommendations might be something you want to read one day. I don't know. Maybe I'm not that important. Maybe I'm just overtired. The link to my Goodreads and our Instagram will be down below as always. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you get notifications when the next video comes out. And yeah, I think that's everything. Thanks so much for watching and for making it this far in this roller coaster ride of a video. And until next time, stay kind.